The other thing that kind of created my sense of humour was British television and programmes like The Young Ones and Monty Python and Blackadder. All these programmes became part of my kind of bloodstream.
He had spent a lot of time listening to the Pixies in his bedroom, and then it was brilliant for him to go into Hot Press and meet people who had the same kind of sense of humour as he did.
I got a regular film review column, you know. I was quite young when all that happened, about 18, 19. And actually, the Hot Press journalists and Arthur Matthews, they were the first people who would actually listen to me, would actually laugh at things I said. I had never had that, and it was a really dizzying experience. And I always tell this story, and it bores the hell out of Arthur, I think, but very early on, we all went to lunch. And this was an exciting thing for me. I'd never gone to lunch. You know, it's kind of an exotic thing to go to lunch, you know. And we were all coming out of the office, and we went down the stairs, and Arthur was at the front of us, and he deliberately tripped and fell down the stairs with a confused look in his face as he fell. And it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I was so impressed that someone would do that just to get a laugh that I just kind of fell in love. I really knew that Arthur was a special mind, you know, and I really wanted to be part of it somehow, or to collaborate with it. We started writing sketches in a very generalised sort of way. And when you're writers and not performers, it's very hard to find someone to perform your sketches, you know. We turned on Smith & Jones, and we noticed that at the end of Smith & Jones, there was a long list of writers. And we realised, oh, they must take contributions.
We sent these sketches to Jim Pullen, who's script editor of Smith & Jones, and he said the lads liked them.
I loved it. I thought it was really brilliant stuff. Much to the chagrin of some of the writers who'd written for a long time on the show. You know, I said, look at this is great. At last somebody's sending me genius, you know. They started writing lots of stuff. And it was just usually a very clever, observed idea, something about life that was happening to them. And secondly, a good ear for what makes funny lines.
Well, we used to go to the meetings and talk back with Mel and Griff, and I suppose we felt a bit naive, really.
It was comedy college for us, you know. It was like a year of learning the ropes. And Smith & Jones taught us how to write conventionally. And I mean conventionally with a small c, because we were able to write some quite crazy sketches for them. But they had to have a beginning, and they had to have a middle, and they had to have an end.
Graham was sort of a bit more wide-eyed. He was the Paul McCartney of the relationship, I would have said. And Arthur was the John Lennon, because Arthur was sort of royally, slightly more detached. Older than Graham, I think. For a while, I was their landlord, too. And they sat in the flat and wrote Father Ted for Hat-Trick for somebody else's company.
I got this treatment of a one-off documentary about a priest called Father Ted Crilly. And there was something about the whole script that was that did just sort of leap out.
These are Jeffrey's original notes. There's definitely something here.
It was clear they had loads and loads of ideas way, way beyond what they'd written. And developing it into a sitcom was pretty easy.
We used to love names as well, like Father Bing Hope.
But Hat-Trick developed it slowly. We just wrote a script, and there was commission, and then another one. And it was a very gradual process. At the same time, or around the same time, we were doing this Alexei Sayle series, Paris, with Talkback.
It was about an artist in fin de siècle Paris at the end of the 19th century. And he was surrounded by lots of, parodies of artists.
I'm not a huge fan. I'm not in a huge hurry to see it again.
Fame at last! What? Fame! I'm going to live forever!
We wrote a character for Alexei Sayle that involved a lot of shouting, and what we should have done was written against that.
Paris is probably too frantic, and if it's not grounded enough in reality, it can kind of float off.
And it stank the place out, really. And those are the ones that make you feel very vulnerable, and those are the ones that make you afraid to make mistakes.
We were very nervous that Channel 4 would say, we're not taking a risk on 3 priests living on an island.
It was probably risky to commission Ted after Paris hadn't done well. It was sort of against received wisdom that you should do that sort of thing.
So I was basically going to say, can we have the script back? Because by this time I really thought, this is good, and I don't know we'll get it on, but I genuinely think these people are really, really good.
Seamus Cassidy, who's head of Channel 4 at the time, you know, despite being Irish, despite this huge failure that we'd just kind of given him, still stuck with us.
I'd had a few things that had done all right, you know. I wasn't in commissioning hell. I've got enough credit in the bank to put a few bob on this particular horse, and all the while wondered, priests on an island in Ireland, how is the great British unwashed going to react to this?
We certainly knew what to avoid after Paris, so we'd already done one bad show, got that out of the way. We were ready to prove ourselves.
A lot of the sensibility of Father Ted was Arthur's. I think the fact that, you know, he had uncles in the priesthood, he was very familiar with the cold, dreary parochial house. He was also very sensitive to the foibles of Irish life, whereas Graham was the more contemporary student of sitcom, the more nerdy one, I think, in a way. You know, he brought things like structure to it, gags to it, a sort of a visual sensibility to it. So I think, if anything, that might be where where they brought their various strengths to bear.
These are small, but the ones out there are far away. Small, far away. Forget it.
Graham, he was as nervous as a kitten. He was really, really, really terrified that it was all going to be dreadful. It's funny, it was odd to watch over a number of series. By the end of Ted, he was very much the executive producer of the project. He was the guy who was taking notes, talking to the director, talking to the producer, and he was in charge.
I was very much a control freak. I drove the director crazy. On series 3, I just thought, sick of annoying directors and tipping them on the shoulder and you know, making them feel that they're not doing a good job. I might as well try it out myself. So I did it, and you know, if it's your own stuff, directing is very easy, you know, because you've already seen it. You've seen each shot in your head.
It was one thing having him, you know, on set as a writer, where he's sort of chipping in from time to time, or he's looking very worried, and you suspect, oh, I must be doing something wrong. Graham has covered his face with his hands. But when he was directing, you know, it became clear that he had a very, very clear vision of what he wanted.
Dougal, look.
I am Chinese, if you please. Come on, Dougal, lighten up.
The thing you don't expect to be a hit is the thing that will be. And what Ted had going for it wasn't like anything else.